The border station of the Galactic Empire floated in the silence of space. It was not a grand warship or a shining city, but a gray outpost with long antennas and scanning dishes reaching out into the void. Inside, officers worked at their consoles, watching the endless streams of data flowing across their screens. For months nothing unusual had happened in this sector. It was considered quiet, almost forgotten by the core worlds. The crew often joked that their work was little more than staring at empty space. On this day, however, something changed. A young officer named Ren leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the glowing display before him. At first he thought it was a mistake in the system, another false alarm from the aging sensors. The outpost had produced such errors before, and usually the problem came from dust particles or background radiation. But this signal looked different. The numbers did not fade. They grew stronger with every passing second. "Commander Var," Ren called out, his voice slightly nervous, "there is something strange on the long-range scans." The commander, an older officer who had grown weary of routine, walked over with little interest. He had heard such claims many times before. But as soon as his eyes rested on the display, his expression shifted. A narrow line of energy was moving at incredible speed across the edge of the chart. The path was straight, without hesitation, as if the object knew exactly where it wanted to go. "Is this a ghost reading?" Var asked, "or is that real?" "It is real, Commander," Ren replied. "The system has confirmed it 3 times already. No drift, no loss of signal." Var's frown deepened. He reached over and switched the display to full spectrum. The image sharpened. What they were seeing was not a meteor or a piece of lost debris. It was a ship. Its shape was small, almost insignificant compared to the heavy cruisers of the Empire, yet its speed was beyond anything they had on record. The commander gave quick orders. More officers gathered, checking the data, trying to match the signature with known designs. The Empire's records contained every vessel of every known species. From war fleets to merchant carriers, nothing was left unlisted. Yet the system could not find a match. The computer returned the same answer again and again, no results found. A low murmur spread across the control room. Officers looked at one another with uncertainty. To find a ship not in the archives was unusual. To find one traveling at such speed was alarming. "Send a priority alert to Central Command," Var ordered at last. "Tell them an unidentified vessel has entered Imperial space. No registry. No known design. Approaching fast." The message was transmitted through secure channels. Within minutes, higher authorities responded. They wanted full scans, full reports, every detail the outpost could provide. The station came alive with activity. Scanners pulsed, energy readings streamed in, and tension filled the air. Ren tried to remain calm as he studied the object's movement. It was not drifting. It was not lost. It moved with intent, as if guided by a pilot who knew exactly what they were doing. The speed was the most troubling part. Imperial cruisers, with their advanced engines, could not travel so fast inside normal space. Yet this small vessel was cutting across systems like a blade through cloth. As the minutes passed, more data arrived. The ship ignored the pull of nearby planets and stars. Gravity wells had no effect on it. It slid through them with ease, bending its path only slightly before correcting itself. The crew grew silent as they watched. This was no ordinary engine. This was technology they did not understand. Commander Var kept his eyes on the screen. His calm voice carried weight, but even he could not hide his unease. "Nothing should move like that," he said quietly. "Not in this galaxy." The thought settled over the crew like a heavy shadow. If this was not a design from the Empire, then it must belong to someone else. But who? Every major civilization was under imperial rule. The few who resisted were far behind in science. None of them could create a craft like this. The outpost's alarms rang as the vessel drew nearer. Its trajectory suggested it was not avoiding them. It was coming closer. Whether by chance or by choice, the unidentified ship was heading straight toward the border station. Officers rushed to their posts. Defensive systems were powered, though everyone knew the outpost was not built for real battle. Its weapons were light, meant only to warn or delay until larger ships arrived. If the strange craft was hostile, the outpost would not stand long. Ren felt his heart beat faster. He could not look away from the glowing trace on the screen. The unknown ship was closing in, and still no message came from it. No greeting. No identification code. Only silence. "Stay steady," Var said, though his own hands were tight on the console. "We do not fire first. We wait and observe. If this is truly new, Command will want proof." The glow brightened as the ship neared the edge of visual range. For the first time, faint details of its hull appeared. It was not smooth like Imperial ships. Instead, it carried sharp angles and strange patterns that shimmered against the darkness of space. No one in the control room spoke. The silence was heavy. Every officer felt the same thought pressing at the back of their minds. This was something the Empire had never seen before. The unknown ship was no longer just a trace of light on the scanners. It was now within visual range, and the outpost crew gathered in silence around the central display. The screen flickered for a moment, then sharpened to reveal the approaching vessel. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. Imperial ships were designed with smooth symmetry, layered with armor and marked by bright insignias of power. This craft had none of those signs. Its hull shimmered faintly, not with polished metal but with shifting shades that seemed to bend the starlight around it. Its shape was sharp and narrow, with edges that looked too thin to withstand battle, yet it moved with flawless balance, gliding as if space itself carried it forward. Ren stared, his mouth half open. He had studied every entry in the Imperial archives during training. None looked like this. The closest comparison was a scout vessel, but scouts were fragile and slow, nothing like the precision and speed of this ship. Commander Var folded his arms as he examined the image. His eyes were calm, but his thoughts were racing. "This is no merchant craft," he said. "It is built for purpose." But whose purpose? The crew exchanged uneasy glances. A ship with no registry, no signal, and no match in records meant only one thing: an origin beyond the Empire's knowledge. And in the Empire, knowledge was control. Anything beyond it was a threat. The ship continued to move closer, ignoring the warnings sent by the outpost. Automated messages in the Empire's common tongue echoed into the void, repeating the command to identify and halt. The vessel gave no reply. It did not slow. It did not alter course. "It hears us," one officer whispered. "It must hear us." Ren shook his head. "Then why stay silent?" The tension in the room grew heavier. Officers typed rapidly, feeding more power into scanners, trying to pierce the ship's outer shell for a deeper analysis. At last, fragments of data appeared. Energy signatures showed no trace of standard engines, no signs of plasma drives or ion thrusters. The propulsion was something else entirely, something the computers could not decode. "It moves without fuel signatures," one technician reported, her voice shaking. "Whatever it uses, it is clean. No waste. No exhaust." "Impossible," Var replied sharply. "No vessel travels without leaving a trail." And yet the evidence was clear. The strange craft was clean, silent, and fast. As the distance closed, the details of its surface became sharper. Strange lines were etched across its hull, not like armor plating but more like symbols. The patterns glowed faintly, shifting from pale blue to silver as the ship turned. Some thought they were decoration, others believed they might be part of its design, channeling energy in ways the Empire had never imagined. "It looks alive," Ren said softly before realizing he had spoken aloud. The commander glanced at him. Ships are not alive. Ren lowered his eyes but could not shake the feeling. The way the vessel moved, the way it adjusted so naturally to gravitational pulls, the way it glided as though space itself bent to its will, it seemed less like a machine and more like a creature passing through an ocean. Suddenly, the craft altered its course. Instead of heading directly for the outpost, it shifted with impossible precision, sliding between the defensive perimeter markers as though it knew where every one of them was located. Not a single alarm was triggered. It slipped through as if the defenses were nothing more than faint shadows. Gasps filled the control room. Defensive lines were designed to be absolute. No smuggler, no pirate, no rival vessel had ever bypassed them. But this ship did so with ease, as if the barriers had been laid out for its amusement. Track every movement, VAR commanded. Do not lose focus. This is history being written. The vessel slowed for the first time. Its speed dropped until it was almost drifting, but there was no hesitation in its path. It circled the outposts slowly, almost as though it were observing them. Cameras followed every angle, capturing images that would soon be transmitted to the core worlds. The crew's nerves stretched thin. Was this a test? A show of strength? Or was the ship merely curious? The silence made it worse. If the craft had spoken, if its pilot had transmitted even a single word, the crew would know how to respond. But silence left room for fear. At last, the craft aligned itself with the station's front viewports. It hovered at a respectful distance, neither retreating nor advancing. For the first time, the crew had a clear and steady view. It was small, yes, smaller than an Imperial frigate. But there was something about it that felt immense. It carried no weapons that could be identified, no heavy cannons or missile bays. Yet its very presence made the officers uneasy. It was as if they all sensed that power was hidden within, a kind of strength they could not measure. The lights along its hull shifted once more, forming shapes that almost resembled letters. Some officers leaned forward, trying to decipher them, but the symbols vanished before they could be recorded. Then the screens flickered. For the briefest moment, the station's systems trembled as if the strange craft had touched them, not with weapons but with a signal so subtle it barely registered. Then the systems returned to normal. The crew looked at each other in shock. The unknown vessel had just reached into their technology without permission. Commander Var's voice was low but steady. This is no accident. Whoever pilots that ship knows exactly what they are doing. And they want us to know that they can touch us whenever they choose. No one argued. The silence of the craft was now louder than any threat. It had spoken without words, and the Empire had heard. The unknown ship remained in position for several long minutes, silent and steady before the border station. The crew could not look away from the strange vessel. Some waited for weapons to appear, others for a message to be spoken, but nothing came. The silence pressed heavier with each passing moment. Commander Var knew that waiting too long could be seen as weakness. The Empire was built on authority. No outsider, no stranger, no unregistered ship was allowed to move freely inside Imperial space. At last, he gave the order that everyone had been waiting for. Summon the patrol fleet. We will intercept. His words carried across the control room. Officers transmitted signals to nearby cruisers that patrolled the border. These ships were far larger than the unknown vessel. Their armor was thick, their weapons heavy, and their crews trained for battle. Within the hour, 5 cruisers closed in on the location, forming a crescent line between the outpost and the mysterious ship. On the central display, Ren watched as the cruisers moved into formation. Their bright energy signatures filled the screen with confident power. The Empire was showing its strength. Against 5 warships, no vessel could hope to stand. One of the captains opened a channel. His voice was loud and firm, echoing through the outpost. Unidentified vessel, you are in restricted Imperial space. Cut your engines and prepare for inspection. Failure to comply will result in force. The order was translated and sent in multiple languages. The crew held their breath, waiting for the unknown ship to reply. But once again, there was nothing. No voice. No sound. No sign of fear. The captains repeated the demand. Still nothing. Finally, the lead cruiser fired a warning shot. A beam of energy cut across the void, blazing just past the strange vessel's side. The light struck nothing, vanishing into the emptiness of space. The unidentified ship did not move. It did not even flinch. Commander Var leaned closer to the display. His mind raced. He knew the Empire could not allow defiance. If the ship ignored them again, the captains would fire for real. Do they not understand? Ren whispered. Or do they simply not care? Before anyone could answer, the unknown ship moved. It was not a retreat, not even an attack. It drifted slightly to the left, then accelerated. Not fast, not yet, but enough to glide out of the exact position the cruisers had surrounded. Adjust formation, the lead captain ordered. Block its path. The cruisers moved in response, but the ship moved faster. It slipped through the narrow gap before the formation could close. Its motion was smooth, almost playful, as if the barriers meant nothing. The lead cruiser fired again, this time a direct shot aimed at the ship's hull. The energy beam hit with perfect accuracy. Yet to the shock of every officer, the beam scattered into fragments of light upon impact, spreading like sparks across water. The ship's hull glimmered for a second, unharmed. Gasps filled both the outpost and the fleet. The cruiser fired again. And again. Every shot failed. The mysterious vessel simply continued its path, weaving between the ships with perfect precision. Missiles were launched next, chasing the vessel with trails of fire. The unknown ship made a sudden turn that no Imperial vessel could have achieved. The missiles tried to follow but twisted into confusion, spinning apart before vanishing in bursts of light. It fools our targeting, one officer cried. The systems cannot lock on. Commander Var stood with his hands tied behind his back. His calm voice did not hide the truth. We are outmatched. This is not a fight, this is a lesson. The unknown ship cut between the cruisers once more, making their heavy forms look slow and clumsy. Each turn, each movement, was precise to the smallest degree. It was as though the pilot knew the cruisers better than their own captains. The patrol fleet gave chase, but they could not catch it. The mysterious craft darted ahead, then slowed just enough to let them close, only to slip away again. The chase became humiliating. 5 warships against one small vessel, and not a single shot could touch it. Inside the outpost, the crew watched with growing disbelief. Ren could not tear his eyes from the display. He had seen pirates run from the Empire. He had seen rebels fight and lose. But never had he seen a ship mock Imperial power so completely. After several minutes, the unknown vessel stopped again. It hovered at a safe distance, its lights shimmering faintly. It had not fired a single weapon. It had not even raised a defense that they could see. And yet it stood untouched, while the Empire's finest ships circled it in shame. The captains waited for orders. Their voices were filled with frustration. Commander, we request permission to engage with full force. If we combine fire, we may overpower its defenses. But Var shook his head. His eyes never left the strange vessel. No. If we fire together, we may only reveal more of our weakness. This ship does not fear us. It is showing us something, and we must understand what before we act again. Silence fell across the bridge. The truth was clear. The patrol fleet had been tested and found wanting. The mysterious vessel had not attacked, yet it had won. Ren leaned closer to the screen, his voice low. If it is only one ship, what happens when there are more? No one answered him. The question lingered in every mind. The unknown vessel drifted slowly, then with a sudden burst of speed it shot away from the cruisers. Faster and faster it went, leaving the Imperial ships far behind. It did not vanish into the void completely, not yet, but it proved again that no engine in the Empire could keep pace. The patrol fleet remained where it was, silent in defeat. And in the outpost, Commander Var stared at the empty space where the ship had been, his thoughts heavy. For the first time in his long career, he felt a deep and unfamiliar sensation. It was not anger. It was not pride. It was fear. The patrol fleet drifted back toward the border station, silent and unsettled. Their defeat against a single unknown ship weighed heavily on every captain and officer. The Empire had not faced such humiliation in centuries. It was not only the failure of weapons, but the unsettling truth that the enemy vessel had not even fought back. Commander Var stood at the main console, his eyes fixed on the screen where the strange craft was last seen. He gave a single order that carried across the control room. Begin a full scan. I want to know what is inside that ship. If we cannot stop it, then we must understand it. Technicians hurried to obey. Powerful sensors from both the outpost and the cruisers turned toward the unknown vessel, which still lingered at the edge of the system. The ship drifted calmly, not fleeing, not hiding. It was almost as if it was allowing itself to be studied. Energy beams swept across its surface. At first, the readings were blocked. The strange hull reflected scans as easily as it had scattered weapons fire. But the Empire's equipment was strong, and the longer they watched, the more cracks appeared in the resistance. Slowly, data began to stream through. Ren read the results with wide eyes. It is small inside. Only one chamber. Life signs detected. There is a single pilot. The room went quiet. A single pilot. Not a crew of hundreds, not a team of scientists, not an army of soldiers. Just one individual guiding a ship that outmaneuvered an entire fleet. Var's voice was steady. Can we identify the species? The technicians worked quickly, layering the faint biosigns against the Empire's endless archives. The database carried records of every known race, every colony, every tribe that had ever been encountered. Each new entry took only seconds. But this time, the system paused. The match was delayed, as if searching in the far corners of memory. Then the answer appeared. The result was simple, yet unbelievable. Human, one technician whispered. The pilot is human. Murmurs spread across the control room. Ren frowned, confused. That cannot be right. Humans are primitive. Their world is marked as restricted. They are not supposed to have interstellar flight. The system confirmed again. The biosign was clear. A single human being sat inside the vessel. The records described them as a minor species from a small planet far from the core. According to official reports, their people were bound to their own star system, still learning the basics of space. They were not a threat. They were not even considered worthy of notice. Yet here one was, piloting a ship the Empire could not touch. Commander Var felt the weight of the moment. He had read about humans in old reports, though most officers dismissed them as insignificant. The Empire did not waste fleets on such species. But now, the evidence stood before him. Somehow, one human had built or found a ship that broke the rules of physics as the Empire knew them. The thought spread quickly through the crew. If one human could do this, what did it mean for the rest of their kind? Was this a single genius, or the first sign of a new power rising from the edges of the galaxy? The patrol fleet captains sent their own reports, filled with unease. Some demanded immediate orders to capture the vessel. Others warned against it, afraid that provoking the human might unleash weapons even stronger than what they had seen. Var sent a message to Central Command, summarizing the discovery. The reply came back swiftly, and the words chilled the entire crew. Confirm identity again. If true, the Empire must prepare. No record of such technology should exist in the hands of humans. Hold position. Do not engage until further orders. The crew obeyed, but their eyes never left the screen. The human vessel drifted closer once more, almost as if it could sense their attention. It was silent, yet its presence filled the space around it with tension. Ren leaned toward Var, his voice low. How did they do it? How could a human travel here, inside a ship that outflies our cruisers? Var gave no answer. He did not know. He only knew that something had changed. The Empire's order, its control, its belief that every corner of the galaxy was known and mapped, had been broken by a single human pilot. For a moment, the human ship flickered with light. The strange lines on its hull pulsed gently, forming patterns that resembled language. The crew tried to translate, but the shapes vanished before the system could lock them in place. It felt less like communication and more like a reminder that the pilot was aware of being watched. The silence grew heavy once more. To the crew, the unknown vessel was no longer simply a mystery. It was a challenge. It carried the weight of something far larger than itself, as if behind that single human stood a possibility none of them wanted to face. Ren's thoughts circled like a storm. He had studied humans only briefly during training. They were said to be curious, restless, and bold beyond reason. Traits that made them unpredictable. If even a fraction of that was true, then what he saw before him was only the beginning. Commander Var placed his hands firmly on the console. His voice carried strength, though inside he felt a growing fear. This discovery will not stay hidden. The Empire will not ignore it. And when they act, we must be ready for what follows. The crew looked to the screen once more. There, in the darkness of space, a lone human piloted a ship that the Empire could neither match nor understand. The outpost officers knew they were witnessing the start of something greater than themselves. A single pilot had forced the mighty Empire to hesitate. And that hesitation carried a message stronger than words. Humans were not supposed to matter. But now the galaxy would remember their name. The news of the human pilot spread faster than light through the Empire's channels. At first, only a few officers believed it. Reports from a border outpost could be dismissed as errors or exaggeration. But the images and data left little room for doubt. A single human had crossed into Imperial space, flying a vessel beyond anything the Empire had ever created. Inside the great halls of Central Command, admirals and ministers gathered in uneasy silence. The chamber, normally filled with firm voices and confident plans, now echoed with quiet tension. Every screen displayed the image of the strange craft, each angle recorded by the border outpost and the cruisers that had failed to stop it. The shimmering hull, the sharp lines, the strange glow, it all played again and again, a reminder of the Empire's weakness. High Admiral Saras leaned forward, his voice heavy. You are telling me this ship outmaneuvered 5 cruisers and shrugged off their fire, yet it carried only one human pilot. The officer giving the report nodded quickly. Yes, Admiral. All data confirms it. One pilot. No crew. Murmurs filled the chamber. The admirals spoke among themselves, disbelief clashing with fear. Humans were supposed to be little more than a forgotten race on a quiet world. They were not part of galactic trade, not part of science councils, not even a military threat. And yet one of them had entered Imperial space with a ship that no one could explain. Minister Kala, known for her sharp mind, stood with her hands folded. If one human can do this, then others may follow. We must consider the possibility that humanity has advanced far beyond the reports we keep. Admiral Saras shook his head. Impossible. Their world was surveyed only decades ago. They lacked even basic interstellar craft. This must be a stolen design, perhaps a relic of some forgotten species. But as the argument grew, more data arrived. The scans from the border station were clear. The vessel's energy patterns did not match any known technology. The drive system was unique. The hull alloy could not be identified. Nothing pointed to another race. It all pointed to something new, something built with methods unknown to the Empire. The chamber fell silent. The thought was terrifying. A single human had achieved what entire empires had failed to create. Meanwhile, aboard the border outpost, the crew watched the human ship hover at a distance. It had not left. It lingered like a shadow just beyond their reach. The silence was worse than an attack. Each passing hour made the crew feel more exposed, as if the human was studying them, learning their patterns, waiting for the right moment. Ren sat at his console, unable to rest. His mind turned over the same thought again and again. Why would the human come here alone? If they had this kind of ship, why reveal it? Why show it to us at all? Commander Var, standing behind him, answered quietly. Perhaps because they want us to know. Perhaps this is not an accident. Perhaps this is a message. The idea unsettled the crew. A message without words, a display of power without weapons. It was a kind of warning. If a lone human could humble the Empire's ships, then what could an entire fleet of such vessels achieve? Back in Central Command, the debate reached a breaking point. Some called for the human to be captured at any cost. Others warned that such an act could trigger disaster. Minister Kala's voice cut through the noise. You do not understand, she said firmly. The issue is not this one human. The issue is what their presence means. If this is the first we see, then more will follow. If they have broken through the limits of our science, then the balance of the galaxy has already changed. Her words left the chamber in silence. For centuries, the Empire had ruled with confidence. Every species, every world, every fleet had been catalogued and controlled. Nothing surprised them. Nothing stood outside their power. But now, a new shadow stretched across that certainty, carried not by an empire, but by one pilot from a forgotten world. On the border station, alarms pulsed again. The human ship moved, its hull shimmering brighter. The strange lines along its surface glowed with steady light. It did not attack, yet its presence was enough to stir fear through the entire outpost. Ren whispered to himself, barely loud enough for others to hear. It is not us watching them. It is them watching us. Commander Var heard the words and did not disagree. Reports from across the Empire continued to flow. Fleets requested instructions. Governors demanded answers. Scientists begged for more data. Fear was spreading, and it grew with every retelling of the event. The mighty Empire, with its countless worlds and endless armies, had been shaken by the sight of one unknown vessel. High Admiral Saras tried to calm the chamber. We are still the Empire. We hold more power than any in the galaxy. One human cannot change that. But his words felt hollow. Everyone remembered the images of the cruisers, firing again and again, their weapons scattering like sparks against the human's ship. Everyone remembered the sight of missiles turning useless in the void. And above all, they remembered the silence. The human had not spoken, had not explained, had not shown anger or fear. The silence itself had carried power. In the outpost, the crew waited for the next move. Hours stretched on, but the human pilot remained patient. No one could tell if he was waiting for them to act, or if he simply enjoyed reminding the Empire that he was beyond their reach. Var stood tall, his hands behind his back, his voice low. The Empire is afraid. They will not admit it, but they are. And fear spreads faster than ships. Ren looked at him, his face pale. Then what happens next? Var's eyes stayed fixed on the strange craft outside. He did not blink, and he did not smile. What happens next, he said, is that the galaxy learns that humans cannot be ignored. The border station remained tense. Days had passed since the first contact with the human vessel. The unknown ship had not attacked, yet its presence filled every officer with unease. Every scan, every observation, revealed only more questions. The pilot moved with perfect control, avoiding all attempts to engage, yet never fleeing the area entirely. Commander Var paced slowly across the control room. His eyes followed the glowing outline of the human ship on the main display. We have studied it. We have scanned it. We have tried to stop it. And still, it waits, he said quietly. Ren looked up from his console, his face pale. Do you think it is testing us, Commander? Or is it simply observing? Var did not answer immediately. He knew that to admit uncertainty in front of the crew would spread panic. Instead, he studied the patterns of the ship's movement. It had slowed considerably, hovering at a distance that allowed them to keep visual and sensor contact. Its movements were smooth and deliberate, not random or careless. It was calculating. Then, without warning, the human ship transmitted a message. The communications system at first struggled to receive it, as if the pilot had used a frequency no one had tried before. The voice that came through was calm, precise, and carried no trace of threat or fear. Imperial Command, the voice said simply, do not be alarmed. I am only passing through. I seek no conflict. My mission is to explore, to test the limits of my vessel, and to observe. The control room fell into stunned silence. Officers leaned closer to their consoles, replaying the message over and over. No one had expected words. No one had expected clarity. And yet, the calm tone carried a weight the Empire had never encountered. Var finally spoke, his voice steady. One pilot, speaking without fear to the greatest power in this galaxy. This is unprecedented. Ren shook his head. It is not just a message. It is a demonstration. The tone itself tells us that we are not in control. The human vessel had moved closer as the message played, positioning itself just beyond the range of the station's defensive systems. The lights along the hull pulsed softly. The strange patterns seemed to respond to the words, forming shapes that were almost readable, but not quite. It was as if the ship itself was alive, sharing the pilot's calm certainty with every inch of its surface. Admirals across the Empire received the broadcast as well. Central Command had been monitoring all frequencies, and the message was relayed through secure channels. Ministers and officers alike listened in silence. The calm, measured voice of the human pilot carried across the vast distance of space, reaching every corner of the Empire. Test what you may, said the human, but know that my purpose is simple. I wish to learn, to explore, and to understand. I do not wish to fight. I do not wish to conquer. I wish only to see what lies beyond my world. The words were not threatening. They were not arrogant. Yet every listener felt the weight of them. The human pilot had accomplished what no fleet could do. The Empire's best ships had failed to stop him. And now, with only words, he had asserted a control no one could contest. Ren turned to Var, his voice low. Commander, do you think he understands us better than we understand him? Var nodded slowly. I do not know. But he has shown patience and intelligence beyond what we expected. His actions speak louder than any threat or warning. He is calm, precise, and in command of everything he touches. The station continued to monitor the human vessel. Despite the advanced Empire sensors, no hidden weapons were detected. The ship moved like a living being, but every movement was deliberate, careful, and restrained. It carried power beyond the Empire's understanding, yet it did not use it for violence. For the first time, Commander Var realized the true lesson the human pilot was delivering. This was not a battle. This was a demonstration of capability and restraint. One human, with one ship, had forced the Empire to stop, to listen, and to understand. Across the control room, officers whispered among themselves. He could destroy us, one said quietly. But he chooses not to. Var's gaze remained fixed on the vessel. That is the most dangerous thing of all, he said. Not the power he holds, but the choice to not use it. He teaches us that humans cannot be measured only by aggression. They have patience, foresight, and control we have not encountered before. The human ship continued to hover, its soft glow lighting the dark expanse of space. It did not move closer to attack. It did not communicate again. And yet, the impact of the single message had been profound. The Empire had felt its first true doubt. For centuries, every enemy had been catalogued, controlled, or destroyed. But now, a single human pilot had shown them that some forces could not be predicted, and some power could not be constrained by size, weapons, or numbers. Rin swallowed hard, staring at the display. Do you think there are more like him? Var's eyes did not leave the ship. Perhaps. And if there are, the Empire must be ready. This is only the beginning. The human pilot did not reply again. He drifted slightly, the vessel's lights pulsing gently, almost in rhythm with the hearts of those who watched. And in that calm, silent presence, every officer at the border station knew that the galaxy had changed. The encounter had ended without a shot fired. No battles had been fought, yet the Empire had learned a lesson it could never forget. One human, calm, intelligent, and patient, had proven that the rules of power did not apply to him. And in that proof, the galaxy had a new fear, one that spread quietly but completely. Humans were no longer just a species to be ignored. They were a force to be reckoned with. The human ship had hovered at the edge of the border station for hours, calm and silent. The officers aboard the outpost remained tense, their eyes fixed on the glowing vessel. They knew the encounter had already changed everything. The fleet had failed, the Empire had been tested, and the pilot had not even fired a single weapon. Commander Var stood at the main console, hands folded behind his back. He watched the ship slowly rotate, the strange patterns along its hull pulsing gently in the darkness of space. It is not leaving, he said, his voice low. It could go anytime. And yet it waits. Rin's fingers hovered over his console. Is it waiting for something? Or is it waiting for us to act? Var did not answer immediately. The human vessel had already demonstrated its strength. It had outmaneuvered 5 cruisers, ignored missiles, and delivered a message that had shaken the Empire. Now it remained, patient and controlled, a presence so powerful it could not be ignored. Across the galaxy, Central Command was alive with tension. Reports had reached every sector. Ministers debated, admirals planned, scientists analyzed, and governors demanded explanations. The images of the single human vessel, the data from its ship, and the calm message it transmitted had spread fear across the Empire. Never before had one individual caused so much concern. Back at the border station, the human ship suddenly shifted its position. It moved not with the reckless speed the fleet had first seen, but with precision, silently cutting through space with a grace that no Imperial vessel could match. The crew watched in awe as the ship drew slightly closer, then stopped again, as if observing them one last time. Rin's voice was barely above a whisper. It is teaching us, isn't it? Showing us what it can do, and yet choosing not to destroy us. Var nodded slowly. It is teaching the Empire humility. One human has reminded us that we do not control everything. That no matter our strength, there are forces we cannot predict. The human ship's lights pulsed brighter. The patterns on its hull shifted rapidly, forming shapes that were almost like language. The crew tried to decipher them, but the images vanished too quickly. Whatever message the pilot was sending, it was subtle, indirect, but unmistakably clear. The vessel was intelligent, aware, and entirely in control. Then, without warning, the ship accelerated. At first it was gradual, a slow increase in speed that seemed normal. But then it moved faster, faster than any Imperial ship could follow. Even the border station's sensors struggled to keep up. The lights blurred as the craft slipped beyond normal space, moving in a way that defied the Empire's calculations. The crew watched in disbelief as the human vessel vanished, leaving behind only traces of its passage in the sensors. The silence that followed was heavy, almost unbearable. The outpost had seen the impossible and survived, but the message was clear. The human could come and go at will, beyond reach, beyond prediction. Ren sat back in his chair, his face pale. It is gone. But it is not gone. We have no way to track it. No way to stop it. Nothing in the Empire can catch it. Var remained silent for a moment, his mind heavy with thought. The Empire has always believed it could measure everything. Control everything. Now we see that some things cannot be measured. Some power cannot be controlled. And that power belongs to humans. Far across the galaxy, news of the humans' actions spread. Admirals and governors spoke in hushed tones, sharing images and data, discussing what had occurred at the border outpost. The Empire, once confident in its strength and knowledge, now trembled. If one human could do this, what other secrets might humanity hold? What other advancements might they have achieved unnoticed? The border station continued its work, scanning the area, reviewing every recorded image and signal. They searched for signs of where the human had gone, but nothing could be found. It was as if the pilot had slipped between the stars, leaving only questions behind. Commander Var addressed his officers. Remember this moment. We have seen what a single human can do. We have felt their presence. And we have learned that the galaxy is larger, stranger, and more unpredictable than we imagined. Ren nodded, still staring at the empty space where the vessel had been. Do you think there are more like him? Var's eyes did not leave the stars. If there are, the Empire will have to face them. And when they come, we must be ready. Humans cannot be ignored. They cannot be catalogued or controlled. We must respect their ability, or we will fall. The crew understood the weight of their commander's words. The Empire had always been the strongest, the most certain power in the galaxy. Every world, every fleet, every species had been accounted for. But now, the Empire's confidence had been shattered by a single pilot from a small, forgotten world. The human ship had not returned, but its presence lingered. The image of the glowing hull, the impossible speed, and the calm voice of the pilot remained etched in the minds of all who witnessed it. It was not only a story of power, but a story of choice. A single being had the strength to destroy, yet had chosen restraint. Var turned to his officers one last time. We have learned our place. We have learned caution. And we have learned fear. The human ship had disappeared, yet the Empire felt its shadow across the galaxy. The knowledge that one human had altered the balance of power, even temporarily, was enough to change every strategy, every plan, every expectation. The galaxy would never see humans the same way again. For the first time in centuries, the Empire realized it was not invincible. And that realization, quiet as it was, spread faster than any fleet or weapon ever could. Humans were not in the records. But now, the Empire knew they could not be ignored. And that knowledge carried a new, unstoppable fear.